got to do, and that spirit says do. Do 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 do, do, and that spirit says do. You got to do when the spirit says do. You got to do when the spirit says do. When the spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the spirit says do. 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 You got to sing when that spirit says sing. Sing when the spirit you says got to sing when that spirit says sing. Sing, sing, sing. When the spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the spirit says sing. 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 Spirit says sing.
You got to groove when the spirit says groove.
You gotta be grooving, you gotta be
You've
grooving.
got to groove when the spirit says groove.
You have got to groove.
When the spirit says groove, you've got to groove, oh Lord. You've got to groove
Got to
when the
groove.
spirit says groove.
Says groove.
Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove.
You got to rock when the spirit says rock. You got to rock when the spirit says rock. When the spirit says rock, you got to rock, oh Lord. You got to rock when the spirit says rock. 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 Spirit says rock.
Check it. Yo, I had to call before I walk and now I do the 1-2 step. I heard the spirit and it said the groove, yeah. That's why I do my own shuffle, tapping feet, clapping hands. If you could talk, you could sing. If you could walk, you could dance. Spirit told me bless the track with the vocals, and I come around your city rocking with the locals. Fading out, got my eyes closed. I think the Lord talking to me, gotta get up all in my zone. Candle gazing after doing kundalini. I wrote it in my journal, trying to find the true meaning. It ain't gonna happen overnight, I really ain't stressing. I'ma get the blessing. I don't need Google directions, I just follow spirit. I think I start to hear it. The elders talk about alignment, I just start to get near it. Walk along the path, with or without a crew. When the spirit says do, I make it do what it do. Come on.
Do when the spirit says do.
Oh yeah.
You got to do.
Y'all know what it's like when the spirit says do. I mean, you just gotta do what it do. I know right now with some spirit talking to you inside and it's telling you to do something. And whatever that is, go with it, alright? Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit says do. And you know what? I'ma do what I do. You go ahead and do what you do. And that's how we gonna do what we do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, baby.
Spirit says do.
Hey, 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 hey.
Welcome to the Morristown UU Fellowship. We are so glad you're here. Let us open our time together by affirming, it is good to be. It is good to be here. It is so good to be here together. Our main announcement this morning is about the launch of our annual support drive. And I'm going to turn it over to the president of our congregation, Shari Lowe, to share a testimonial.
Hi, I'm Shari Lowe, President of the Board of Trustees. The theme of this year's annual support drive is weaving the fabric of community from the strands of our separate lives. The fabric of our community is strong. Through the distancing and sorrows of this pandemic, we have built on our past prudent stewardship and found new ways to connect, to thrive, and to support one another. The annual drive ends May 20th. You will receive a personal letter explaining our funding goals for this year with a personalized ask for you or your family. Pledges will need to be paid between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th of 2022. Your pledge to our operations this year will support paying our staff at levels that are fair for our region and in line with the fair compensation guidelines of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We have engaged a new vendor to properly steward our beautiful grounds. COVID changed our world and expectations. We will be doing hybrid online and in-person meetings and worship even after COVID ends, and so we need to maintain the improved Wi-Fi, video, and other tech that we've just installed. We're restoring our religious education programs and adult ministries to needed funding levels. Our pledge goal is just under 10% above what we've raised in past normal years, and a tad over 10% higher than we managed in this last COVID-depressed year. But added to service auction funds, rental income, and other sources, this goal will enable us to do all the things I've just mentioned, which are detailed in a budget attachment in your letter. If each family unit manages to give the amount that is requested in your individual letter, we will make this goal. Thank you in advance for every contribution. We know the requested amount won't be possible for some of you, but we also know from past experience that others will find that they can give more for this year. And so overall, we will make it. Here's why we believe in you. This year, while some families had to step back because of COVID uncertainties, as they have kept giving what they could, and others gave more, average giving per pledge unit has continued to rise, not just in this year, but every year for the past 10 years or so. This COVID year, donations have come into the minister's discretionary fund at the highest levels in recent memory. This COVID year, the Sunday offering has been up higher than any year that we recently have on record. But in the meantime, the prudent management of your generous gifts has enabled the fellowship to pay our mortgage down to virtually nothing, to cover the cost of retaining staff this COVID year at full salary, and to upgrade our Wi-Fi, our meeting room tech, and AV facilities. You delivered our new parking lot, landscaping, and play equipment, and we have enough funds on hand to complete the Oval project that's just getting underway. You have funded our endowment so that we can begin cautiously and safely to withdraw limited amounts every year to fund long-term projects. So please, return your pledge card as soon as possible, just as I have, but before the campaign ends on May 20th. The board, as always, thanks you and is available to answer your questions.
Good morning. I am the Reverend Larry Pierce, and I've had the joy of working with your Strategic Planning Task Force as we prepare for the planning for the Soaring 20s strategic planning events and process at Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. So perhaps I'll have the joy of working with many of you as well. This morning I will begin the chalice lighting first with a lighted candle. May this candle represent all of those who have been part of Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's past. Take a moment to remember their faces, to hear their voices, to cherish your memories of them, and to savor and to acknowledge all that they have passed on to you as their living legacy. And now, as I prepare to light this chalice, let us acknowledge that we stand in a particularly challenging present moment, but we also stand on the threshold of a future that is luring us towards some sparkling opportunities. Let this chalice light shine. Recognize that you are part of carrying forward the light of your fellowship into a promising and luring future. Recognize that you can carry the light of this fellowship into the world and into those places that need your liberating message of love, of justice, and of compassion. So may it be. May your light shine boldly and forthrightly now and into the future.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way.
One day, I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here? I wondered. What do you do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me. But it followed me. I worried what others would think. What would people say about my idea? I kept it to myself. I hid it away and didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as it was before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit, I felt better and happier when it was around. It wanted food. It wanted to play. Actually, it wanted a lot of attention. It grew bigger, and we became friends. I showed it to other people, even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid they would think it was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time and that it would never become anything. And at first, I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized, what do they really know? This is my idea, I thought. No one knows it like I do. And it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it, to care for it. I fed it good food. I worked with it. I played with it, but most of all, I gave it my attention. My idea grew and grew, and so did my love for it. I built a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it could be safe to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big, and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands. Because, it said, it is good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. Then, one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my very eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was now a part of everything. And then I realized what you do with an idea. You change the world.
Let us gather our minds and hearts in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, Even as spring is breaking forth with warmth and light and promise, we come today with lament. Our hearts ache over Adam Toledo, who at the tender age of 13, and Dante Wright, who was not much older at 20, were taken so violently from the earth and from their families. We will say their names, and we will name that our system of policing is broken, harmful, and officers must be held accountable to do better. Our hearts ache over the senseless loss of life due to another mass shooting. Matthew Alexander, Samaria Blackwell, Amarjit Johal, Jaswinder Kaur, Jaswinder Singh, Amarjit Sekhon, Carly Smith, and John Weissert all came to work at a FedEx this week in Indianapolis, never to return home again. The shooter was able to purchase and use 2 assault rifles. When, oh love, will it be enough that we will finally change laws to save lives? Even as we feel grief and rage over senseless violence and unjust gun laws, we know that each day is also filled with rays of hope, healing, new life, and love. We celebrate this day, the 40th wedding anniversary of Joe Erhane and Beth Wilson, who were married in our sanctuary by the Reverend Paul Ratzlaff. We celebrate this day the birth of a new baby to our neighbor, the pastor at St. Mark Lutheran Church in Morris Township, the Reverend Bo Nelson, and his wife Alexis. And we give thanks this day for the first spring outdoor gathering of our membership yesterday on our grounds, which were filled with socially distanced but very real laughter, gratitude, generosity, games, chatter, and signs of a vibrant community. We hold so much loss and so much life every day and every week. May we know that we don't hold them alone, whether we are next to each other physically or virtually present to each other. Our lives are tethered to one another by love. May we find comfort and courage in and through that connection, and may we offer it back to others. Amen, and blessed be, and may it be so.
Town.
It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Yes, I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
The most successful growth experiment of our faith tradition in the last 100 years was known as the fellowship movement. It began in 1948 with an idea whose time had come. The big idea was to start Unitarian communities as lay-led fellowships. Up to that point, the traditional way of starting a new congregation was for the American Unitarian Association, the AUA, to heavily subsidize the salary of the minister as well as other programs. This limited new starts to locations where the AUA was assured of a promising return on their significant investment. Our movement also happened to be experiencing a low tide in terms of numbers of clergy. This limited new congregations to a very small number each year. 3 creative and out-of-the-box individuals came up with another way of starting a congregation. Frederick May Elliott, president of the American Unitarian Association, Reverend Lon Ray Call, an AU minister at large, and Monroe Husbands, the only person to serve as the director of the fellowship program, proposed something completely new. Wherever there were 10 or more religious liberals living in a community where there wasn't already a Unitarian church, they could become a Unitarian fellowship when they expressed agreement with the principles and purposes of the association and paid dues. In exchange, that group would be allowed to send a delegate to the General Assembly and would gain the full support and resources of the fellowship office. This opened up the possibility of Unitarian Universalist communities starting up in small towns, suburbs, and more distant locations than was previously possible. It was a vital shift that addressed a hunger in the wider population for open-minded religious communities beyond the confines of Boston and the surrounding area. Boston is the headquarters of our faith. After the Second World War, Unitarian Universalist families were moving away from the Northeast to the South, to the West, and the Midwest. The U.S. population as a whole was developing more liberal attitudes about the world religions and other sources of wisdom, including the sciences and the humanities, as people gained greater access to a college education. There was also a surge in babies from 1946 to 1964, known as the baby boom period. And college-educated parents were looking for religious education programs that mirrored their progressive values. The big idea of starting lay-led fellowships could expand liberal religion far and wide, regardless of startup resources, both in terms of numbers of people in a particular town, as well as finances. In some ways, starting communities as lay-led fellowships was the natural outgrowth of a deeper idea with theological implications that undergirded the project. Unitarian Universalists have always put forth the notion of the priesthood and prophethood of all believers. We believe that it isn't just ordained ministers, but also the people who make up a congregation who are capable of discerning the spiritual, ethical, educational, and community needs of a particular congregation at a particular time. While the minister may have formal training and can be a guide, everyone in the congregation has an inner conscience, spiritual wisdom, and experience to share. It was absolutely possible then to imagine that the laity could lead meaningful worship even without a minister at the beginning. And the laity could shape a community's spiritual growth through the selection of guest ministers and other speakers. Even after a fellowship grows large enough to call a minister, it is the laity who choose and elect the minister that they feel is the match for their community. The fellowship movement was an idea that made a large impact on our faith. Between 1948 and 1967, somewhere between 600 to 800 seedling fellowships were planted. The hope was that a fellowship would grow and ultimately be able to do 4 things, in addition to holding weekly worship. 1, launch a religious education program. 2, purchase a building. 3, call a minister. And 4, hire other staff. A good number of fellowships never realized this dream, and to this day remain quite small. And as many as half of the fellowships that were planted ultimately closed. However, a good number did realize that very dream, and they are among the most thriving congregations in our Unitarian Universalist Association. Today, at least 30% of the over 1,000 Unitarian Universalist congregations that exist were started as a lay-led fellowship, and about 1/3 of Unitarian Universalists are in those communities. Monroe Husbands, the director of the fellowship office, helped our congregation get its start in 1955. A couple of founding families, including the Masons and the Deutsches, were attending the Unitarian Church in Summit, but they wanted a religious education program for their children closer to home and also available to families further west. These families worked closely with Monroe Husbands to spread the word about the New Start through advertisements in the local paper, like the Daily Record, and direct mail to Unitarian Universalists in the area. They held their first gathering at the community room of the Morristown Trust Company, a bank downtown, if you can believe it, and 50 people showed up at that gathering. By the end of the meeting, Monroe called for and identified 6 volunteers to become the first steering committee, to draft bylaws, and to secure a location to hold religious education classes and worship services. Our community made 2 very strategic decisions from the get-go. Our sapling congregation would meet in a public space rather than a private home, and we would launch with religious education for children from the very first Sunday. Ours is and always has been a community open to newcomers and thinking about the next generation. Only 2 years later, in 1957, we purchased our current building and the surrounding acres. 5 years after that, in 1962, we reached the milestone of 100 members and called our first minister, the Reverend Charles Reinhardt. It was time once again for a fresh start, renewal, and some big ideas to live into and up to. I share this history as a prelude to our strategic planning summit that is happening in a little less than 1 month. We will be gathering for that virtual summit on the evening of Friday, May 14th, and the morning and afternoon of May 15th. Every leader, every member, every friend is invited to participate at the summit itself and or in the continuing planning and development sessions that will follow. As we emerge from the pandemic, we find ourselves and our community in a period of recovery, renewal, and reform. The challenges and opportunities before us provide once again a fresh start, and the need to determine the big idea or big ideas whose time has come for us who are here now. At our summit, we will look to slices of our 65-year history and reflect on some of the opportunities and challenges that we face and rose to in different eras. At our summit, we will engage in that shared ministry of discernment and have conversations about big questions, the big questions that must precede any big ideas. Questions like, who have we been? Who are we now? And who are we becoming? What does our faith ask of us? What are our hearts calling us forth to do together? And who are our neighbors? We want to hold a spacious, creative space where we can open up fully to listening to and sharing what each one of us cares deeply about, as well as what we can collectively commit to as far as what our faith calls us to do in response to when and where we are living. Gil Rendell and Alice Mann have written a book about strategic planning for congregations where they assert that allowing space for conversations, for deep listening and sharing, creates the context for transformation and the culture shifting that we hope for so that our faith can be renewed in every age. They write about making ample space for differences and even arguments to flow through the conversation, and eventually for movement towards accommodation as we make decisions about our shared future. As I reflect on our last strategic plan, I am struck by the wisdom of this guidance. One of the greatest challenges that we faced was deferred maintenance of our facilities and grounds, and whether or not they were the right vehicle to propel us forward from 2011 and beyond. That section of our strategic plan was both the most ambitious and, frankly, the least clarified. And yet the conversation started at that summit and the following planning sessions has never ceased. 10 years later, I can testify that our facilities and grounds are enhanced in countless ways since then, and we aren't done yet. Two aspects of our facilities that I'll mention, changes and choices that we decided to head towards then that are meaningful to this day are, one, outdoor community building spaces that have eased our isolation in a pandemic and even offered opportunities for gatherings around movements for justice in our area in this time. And two, the AV upgrades in our sanctuary, which have allowed us to add rich visuals to our worship through the use of that screen. and to reach people in the virtual world through the capacity to live stream. May the big ideas that emerge from our strategic and holy conversations lead others to testify 10 years from now that we did what we could to listen to the call of love now in the wake of a pandemic and to respond to it with the fullness of our spirits and our hearts, our plans and our deeds. May it be so.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
And now in our going, may the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine down upon us and radiate out from within us. May it be gracious unto us and grow our commitments to liberation. For this is the day and the life that we are given. So let us plant seeds of hope and healing, joy and justice in it.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says sing. 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 Spirit says sing.
You got to groove when the Spirit says groove.
You gotta be grooving, you gotta be
You've
grooving.
got to groove when the Spirit says groove.
You have got to groove.
When the Spirit says groove, you've got to groove, oh Lord. You've got to groove
Got to
when the
groove.
Spirit says groove.
Says groove.
Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove.
You got to rock when the Spirit says rock. You got to rock when the Spirit says rock. When the Spirit says rock, you got to rock, oh Lord. You got to rock when the Spirit says rock. 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 Spirit says rock.
Check it. Yo, I had the call before I walk and now I do the 1-2 step. I heard the Spirit and it said the groove, yeah. That's why I do my own shuffle, tapping feet, clapping hands. If you could talk, you could sing. If you could walk, you could dance. Spirit told me bless the track with the vocals, and I come around your city rocking with the locals. Fading out, got my eyes closed. I think the Lord talking to me, gotta get up all in my zone. Candle gazing after doing Kundalini. I wrote it in my journal, trying to find the true meaning. It ain't gonna happen overnight, I really ain't stressing. I'ma get the blessing. I don't need Google directions, I just follow Spirit. I think I start to hear it. The elders talk about alignment, I just start to get near it. Walk along the path, with it without a clue. When the Spirit says do, I make it do what it do. Come on.
Do when the Spirit says do.
Oh yeah.
You got to do.
Y'all know what it's like when the Spirit says do. I mean, you just gotta do what it do. I know right now with some Spirit talking to you inside and just telling you to do something, and whatever that is, go with it. Alright? The Spirit says do.